Hi, thank you so much for joining us for Now New Next. I'm Michelene and I'm Interim Head of Platform at Worklife Ventures. We started this event a couple days ago and this is our second to last event, and what a topic to talk about with our final panel. Creators put in so much work to grow their audience and they deserve to make a living doing exactly what they love. We'll be discussing the latest methods and latest tech that can help you grow your creative empire. And for this event, we're so lucky to have Ronak, Trivedi, who is co-founder and CEO of Pietra, Alexis Gay, who is Senior Manager of Creator Partnerships and Business Operations at Patreon, and Walker Williams, who is co-founder at Fourth Wall. Before we kick off, I want you to all know that we'll have a live Q&A, so don't be shy to drop your comments in the Q&A box below. So let's get right into it. And, really just, although the pandemic has decimated creators' revenue, we've seen creators adapt to this new landscape. All things considered, what do you believe the new business plan or playbook for creators will be or should be?
I could start. Go ahead, Ro. Do you want to start?
No, go for it.
All right. So while advertising and sponsorship dollars have been pretty significantly impacted by coronavirus, with a lot of companies pulling back, viewership numbers are actually way up, at least for like most online platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So what we've been seeing is a move from maybe a more focus on sponsorships and brand partnerships to more diversified revenue models. So e-commerce, memberships, shout outs, a lot more creativity and direct to fan interaction going on. So I think there have been some pullbacks with ad dollars, but actually other aspects of creator revenue are way up from what we're seeing.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Walker, you touched on membership and diversifying your income streams as a creator. I think now more than ever, fans are looking for a way to connect not only with each other, with their friends and family, but also with the creators they love. And so offering a little something extra or something new in the form of merch or a live stream or something that they haven't experienced before is a great way to both stay connected and then also try to replace some of that revenue that they may be missing out on as we watch things like live events and other in-person events get taken away.
Totally. And I think, not to chime in as well, but one thing I thought was really interesting is as viewership numbers go up and people are more and more connected, at least through social media and like other types of media that people are creating, what we're finding is something that's really cool is people are getting more and more excited to follow the journey of these creators. And we're seeing more and more of people sharing the content of like the process of getting to the thing that then they will eventually monetize. And so from Pietra's perspective, whether it's, if you're designing your own jewelry line or beauty collection, it's interesting to see the creators understanding content is something people are watching. So why not have content around like, actually starting your company? And before, I feel like it was a lot of, there's this big reveal and like, that was awesome. And now when everyone's glued to their phones all day in their house, we see people being very excited about being taken along the journey with the creators. And that, plays into a lot of extra content, but then also culminates to something that people feel a part of, which is, I think a little bit more authentic, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah, so, and I think that's such a great point that all of you brought up. So kind of playing off of some of the points that Ro and Walker and Alexis, you all kind of chimed in a bit on, folks are making more behind the scenes content, really giving us a more intimate look and more than ever. So my question is, how do creators balance engaging their audience and giving them exclusivity to all the things that are happening in the background, but then also balancing monetizing that content, because you can serve your audience, but then some people never make money serving their audience?
I'm happy to kick this one off, and then obviously would love to hear Walker and Ro from your perspectives as well. But Sometimes when I think about a creator's audience, I think about it like a funnel, where at the very top of the funnel, you've got folks who are interested in your content, maybe they're your fans, and then all the way at the bottom, you have that most engaged segment of your audience. These are the people who are going to join your membership or buy your merch or buy your product, things like that. And I think that the balance creators need to strike, which can be very difficult, is informing that top of funnel. So creating content that's going to go wide and be appealing to a wider audience, but then also serving the bottom of that funnel, their most engaged super fans, with that exciting, exclusive, typically paid for content such as merch or membership. And so when it comes to balance, obviously that's going to be different for every creator. But I think you want to think about making sure that you're feeding that top of funnel. So you're always bringing new fans into your ecosystem. But then also, what are you creating that's going to be really special and exciting to the people who are coming back every week, who like every post, who are so excited when you put something up on Instagram?
I guess I'll jump in next. So I realized I didn't introduce myself. My name's Walker. I'm the co-founder of a platform called Fourth Wall that helps creators monetize. We're a little bit stealth or behind the scenes right now, but we power a lot of creators' websites. We're sort of like Shopify in that you would never see our branding on the websites, but really specifically focused on creator monetization through e-commerce and memberships on one platform. Previously, I was the co-founder of a platform called Teespring, which also had a slight focus on creators. But in this topic specifically, I think this balance, it really depends on what your focus is. I think for some industries, like if you're teaching or selling courses, it makes sense to move a huge percent of your content behind a paywall and really focus on that paid content as a core focus. If you're on an algorithmically driven platform like a YouTube, an Instagram, a TikTok, the balance that we've seen, at least in my experience, is that the more of your content that you can put out for free, the better, because those algorithms really feed off of engagement, view counts, to give you new eyeballs, to recommend your content to new fans. So what we see is that people oftentimes pull their content behind a paywall a little too early. And really that it's not always necessary. What you see is that fans, that 1% of fans that has the ability to financially support you and the love to do so, what they're looking for is a deeper connection with you. And so there are other ways where you can add opportunities for those fans to support you financially without pulling content behind paywall, whether that is the e-commerce offerings, whether it's engagement. So if they buy something, or let's say they become a member, send them a thank you note, a personal note, things like that really go far. They give that surprise and delight, in our experience, a little bit beyond what, say, pulling 50% of your content and saying, oh, you've got to pay to see more videos. So I think it's a balance depending on whether you're on an algorithmically driven platform or not, that really determines how much to paywall.
And I think, and for the audience watching right now, it sounds like we have our first major key for our playbook that we're coming up with as we're doing this panel. Expand and throw the net really wide. Don't limit yourself. Get more content out there. So with that said, every business comes with a risk, even being a creator. And the risk being, if you're relying on your creator income to, financially sustain you for your everything that you need, the risk is, can I pay my rent? So, based from the things that each of you have seen on your platforms and the people who have been successful on your platforms, what are some practical best practices that you've been seeing those users do that can be beneficial to the audience today?
I can kick this one off. So for Pietra, that helps people launch a branded product line. I think one of the interesting things that we are seeing is it starts with a very optimistic and emotional connection to a small set of creators when they start their business, and they will get the support that they're looking for, whether it's people buying products. But what's very interesting to me is helping these creators understand that they can start thinking about it like a business. And with Pietra, we take great care in building these growth tools, right? And even just saying the word growth tools to a creator can sound daunting, but helping them understand things like you should be collecting, email addresses, and you should start a newsletter. And even if you think you have nothing to say, like, these are valuable things that in a year from now, it's like planting a tree. In a year from now, it's going to be very, very helpful to your business. And you're going to find that although you maybe start at a different starting line than someone else who doesn't have an audience, very quickly when you're a year in, let's say, you are operating, a successful small business. And if you want to use that business to pay your rent or, make a living, then it's beneficial to think about all the tools you have at your disposal. And it's companies like Patreon or Fourth Wall or Pietra to make these tools accessible and easy to use. And then also reminding the creators that it's okay to use these tools just like everyone else. They're meant for you to turn your small business into something you can, make a living on. And so that's one thing we've definitely learned at Pietra, and we're investing heavily into after you launch, after the initial pop, how can we help to make sure this brand, grows in the next big thing? And it's not just a flash in the pan.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I can. I feel like I'm answering every question, so I'll try to scale back. But I think Ro hit it on the head, is owning that relationship with your super fans is just so important. So, especially when you're on a platform that's a marketplace, like say YouTube, again, these algorithmically driven platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, where most people are getting their eyeballs, even Facebook in many ways. As a very small percent, 1 to 10% of your audience become super fans, you want to have direct relationships with those fans, because the platforms aren't going to give that to you directly. They're going to give you shades of it, but the best thing you can do is establish those relationships with those super fans and then invest in them, because regardless of what happens with the platform, those are the fans that are going to stick with you. Let's say if you move somewhere else, or if you start something new, like a newsletter or a membership. So really getting ownership and control over that relationship so that you can offer special things and keep contact, even if something changes on the platform, is so key for diversifying the risk and reducing the risk, really.
I love that point so much. Totally agree with what Walker and Ro laid out. To briefly contextualize what I do, I work at a company called Patreon, which is a platform that lets artists and creators of all kinds run their own membership businesses to fans. So totally playing in this relationship to super fan place, as well as providing a way for sustainable recurring revenue for creators. Something that's been touched on a couple times is this idea of owning your audience and building the relationship with your super fans as a key to stability moving forward as a creator. Total +1 on that. And what I would add is that stability is what gives you the flexibility to actually grow and experiment as a creative individual. So taking this whole idea of why independence and owning your audience is important, I think about it a lot like, as a creative, sure, there are ways on the internet to make money doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. I'm thinking specifically of those more algorithmically driven opportunities for monetization like ads. But as a creative person, if you want to grow and you want to stretch and experiment and expand, you need to own that relationship with your super fans, that they can come see you do it wherever you go. So maybe that's YouTube today, or it's TikTok tomorrow, or in 3 years it's a book, or in 5 years it's a TV show. But to Ro's point about growing those relationships now, you'll take that audience with you place after place, and you won't be beholden to some sort of algorithmic change or other unanticipated event, thinking of the world right now, because you'll be protected by that relationship you've built with your fans.
And I love the metaphor, particularly that Ro had brought up about planting the tree. And, over time, as you nurture, continue feeding that connection with your audience, it will grow over time. But I also want to acknowledge there are some creators who will never grow up to be a big oak tree or a big redwood tree. And some, truly intentionally want to keep their creator audience, their community small. So are there examples of creators who are financially successful, who are keeping things small scale that you're seeing right now? And what are they doing differently versus even people who have bigger platforms but don't know how to monetize their audience?
I mean, I have one example that I can speak of, which is one at Pietra is near and dear to our hearts. But we have one of our creators. She designed a collection. It was a jewelry line, and she started a charity with a friend to bring awareness to a bunch of different great causes, like eating disorders. And things of that nature. And I think one of the interesting things that I've seen is she's one of our most successful creators. Right after she launched, it's called The Chain, by the way, check it out. And what's kind of interesting is I find that she's very principled. Her and her co-founder are very principled in their process, which is like, we have this company, it's called The Chain. We don't need to like overextend. We have this amazing community, and we want to create things that are for this community, and we want the community to organically grow and like appreciate the products that we're creating. And so I thought it was a really good example of like us as a company can go to a creator and be like, you should do this, try and make as much money as possible. And then like, they'll be like, whoa, like we're doing this from a principled perspective, and we want to support this small community that's, we've grown this over X many years. And we realize that it's totally fine if that is what you want to do this for, and that's your motivation. And I think one of the learnings for us as a company was like, oh, everyone doesn't want to make the most amount of content in the world, so the most amount of product possible, do the most amount of launches per year. But what they say is like, we have this cause, we feel really strongly about it, and let's just support the community. And if that means, we don't blow up to be $1 billion empire overnight, that's fine. But it was a learning, I think, more for our company in speaking with different types of creators, and then understanding like, oh, right, there are these principled creators that their audience is a niche, and they, it's not, the goal isn't to explode it into something amazing overnight.
Yeah, we definitely on Patreon have examples of creators who have, I guess, what one might call smaller audiences, though to some, if you're like if I said to my mom, oh, they only have 25,000 followers on Instagram, she'd be like, 25,000 people is so many people. So I do think that's important to keep in mind, that when we talk about numbers, I think the internet has kind of desensitized us to just how many people are following some of these accounts and who are in these communities. But I think the strength of something like membership or a product line or merch is that you don't necessarily need 1 million fans in order to convert a small percentage of those to something meaningful. I'm thinking of, a Patreon creator, Jessica McCabe, who runs How to ADHD, which is a YouTube channel where a Business Insider article just came out that I can drop in the chat, where she's earning, an additional $15,000 a month in income from her 2,500 patrons. 2,500, that's a decent group of people. That's a sizable number of people, but it's not the like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people we might think is required to earn additional income like that.
I think everyone has like, it's so funny when you say these numbers. I think everyone's like spectrum of like what's big and small is completely out of whack. Like you said, it's like the number of people that you need to support your venture is usually smaller than you think. The number of people that will follow you automatically and not convert is usually way larger than you think. Your demo, it's all just like the numbers, I feel like every few years, like change by an order of magnitude, and people's expectations also change by an order of magnitude. But like, it's interesting to hear you say that. I feel like part of this is to like, for the creators that discover that, you have super fan, you have these different tiers of fans. You have super fans, and then you have like, random bots that have followed you as well, and then everything in between, right? And so it's just always funny I'm like you, where I'm like, yes, small audience, like 25,000 people, like that's a lot of people.
Like
right?
Literally, that's Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a 20,000 seat arena.
And they will always be like, can't wait to get to 100K. And you're like, Jesus.
Right, of course.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, Alexis, when you just said 25,000 fills up Madison Square Garden, oh my God, that was actually a huge aha moment for me too. I feel like I'm having an Oprah moment right now.
Yeah. Imagine 20 years ago, an artist putting on a concert, and you're like, you can fill up Madison Square Garden, and now we're like, I'm going to set my goal for the end of the year to double the 60,000. And you're like, geez, like, they're just so out of whack.
What would your advice be to, because there's so much external noise that's influencing and messing up and jacking up what success looks like in, just being a creator and the creator economy? So what advice would you give to creators, especially those who are starting out, about being very intentional and aligning their intentions with what they actually want versus like what they think they should go after?
I think in my experience, if you focus on delighting what I guess will become your fans, so if you focus on building that relationship with a small group of people, the monetization will come. It's different for every type of creator. It might be courses, it might be membership, it might be e-commerce, it might be brand deals and partnerships. It differs widely depending on sort of what your focus is, but the connecting thread between all of the successful creators that I know and have a chance to work with is that they're really focused on providing like a really delightful experience for the fans. And then the monetization, it'll come naturally if you have that deep relationship with fans, whether it's 1,000 fans or 10,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000. It's really about the connection first. And then once you have that relationship and connection, monetization will come in some form.
Yeah, I would plus one that I think like we get this question a lot from creators who sign up for Pietra and they're using we call it the creator hub to like design their product. And, there's a natural fear that comes with like creating something and putting it out there and seeing if it's going to work. And the advice, these three companies are here to support these creators. And what I always tell people is, I think your audience and just people online are pretty good at sussing out inauthenticity now, right? And so what I say is like, don't be discouraged by the absolute numbers today. As long as you're being authentic, right? There are people that share your same passion. There are people that are going to be inspired by your passion. And so if you show them over time that this is an authentic endeavor that you're undertaking, then like Walker said, like it's going to lead to something. I don't know if that's going to be like massive success, but it will slowly catch on. And what I say is like, the one thing that I know is like very, very hard to pull off is when you are just looking to make a bunch of money as quick as possible, monetizing your followers. And it's kind of interesting. The last thing I'll say is like, you would think that you take like a beauty influencer, even if they launch something and it doesn't feel authentic and it's like right square in the middle of what their audience should like, you'll see it be like, oh, interesting. Like you didn't get the success that you thought you'd have overnight. And you realize like, oh, it was pretty easy to see through that if you're just like a casual observer. And so it's like, stay authentic. People can see your passion, just like when we hear leaders speak, right? Like Alexis Walker, this, like we see an awesome talk somewhere and there's like some CEO that we're like, whoa, like we're inspired by it. Let me go follow this person, right? People are doing that at every level. So why not, don't be ashamed by like the small numbers you start with, as long as someone can like, take something away from your experience.
I think that's so awesome. And kind of jumping back on the more practical side of things super quick. So, what you had just mentioned, Ro, was, the example of a beauty creator who launches a product and it doesn't sit well with their audience. So there are creators who are launching things all the time with varying degrees of success. So and this is for everyone, what are some really practical things that you can think about that creators can do to increase their odds of having a successful launch for whether that be new content or whether that be a new product that they're trying to monetize?
This is a great question. I think this is going to be a challenging question to answer, but I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. I do think it's worth mentioning that what will lead to a successful product, merch, membership launch, whatever down the line is the groundwork that you've laid for like the year or 6 months or however long you've been creating up until that point. And we've talked a little bit about success and growth and big numbers, and reconsidering whether you want to just put that 1 million subscriber mark as like, that'll be success. And one of the reasons why you should really think about whether that will mean success to you is, are you creating for an audience, or are you creating for your audience? And if you slowly over time create content for your audience, by the time you're ready to launch something, they're going to be there for you. And if it's authentic, to Rose's point, they're going to be excited about it. If you've spent the last 6 to 12 months simply trying to grow, doing whatever hack and new thing and algorithm trick it takes to grow, you have an audience, but you don't necessarily have your audience. And so that launch isn't going to be as well supported. So I would say the most important thing is doing everything that we've just been talking about to lead to the launch. And then, yes, of course, there are some more practical things that you want to keep in mind, like see if you can like build some anticipation around this new thing that you're doing, thinking about the timing of what you're putting out there in the larger context. That's something we're thinking about with creators right now a lot. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of political news in the next few months. How can you make sure that you're kind of, knowing when those major touch points are going to happen in the news and try and work around them?
Alexis Walker, I'm curious, do you guys help your creators with types of content that they should create? Like, or types of content or merch, like, do you try and guide them creatively? I guess that's the general way to ask it. Or sorry, or do you just present them with the data and be like, here's, we're objective. We're not going to push you in any direction.
On our side, not too much. That I think that creative spark is so unique to each person that we really we want to help with the monetization. And we always talk about, hey, it's our goal to make the money making and business side of the equation easy, so that you get as much of your time to focus on the creativity as you can. And that's sort of how we fit into the puzzle. So we try not to, we try not to pretend that we have any real guidance that's meaningful for a creative person outside of how to turn it into a business and make money from it.
The team that I mentioned that I manage creator partnerships is a team at Patreon dedicated to helping creators launch successfully. So we try to marry our best practices based on what we've seen be successful with what we think might be good for the creator. But that's all based on their existing relationship for their audience. So that consultation might look like, what does your audience love about you? What keeps them coming back for more? Like, what's something you've done that's done really well? And then creatively speaking, typically, I'm trying to think of feedback I've given to creators. It's mostly like how they're framing membership, how they're framing promotion, because there's a way to talk about your membership that makes it sound like this really fun, exclusive, exciting thing. And then there are some other like keywords and phrases that we might recommend they stay away from, for example.
The one other thing that I wanted to mention is I always try to recommend to creators that they compete where they can win on the monetization side. So if you're coming out with merch, you're not going to be the cheapest hoodie or t-shirt or the cheapest jewelry line. You're not going to be, frankly, the most luxurious or highest quality, right? Because there's enormous companies with unbelievable scale in manufacturing and deals, et cetera. But where creators can compete that big companies just cannot is on the warmth and the relationship side of the experience. So if you like, these fans are not they're not buying the t-shirt or the hoodie or becoming a member because you have the most perks or it's the softest cotton or frankly because it's the coolest design, right? They're buying because they love you and they want to support you and they want to get deeper in terms of that relationship with you. So we try to guide people to focus on how they can structure their drop or launch around deepening that relationship and giving fans ways to become a bigger part of the community, as opposed to just making it all about, hey, trying to make it all about the design or like the fabric, et cetera. Quality is super important, right? But it's not where you're going to win.
Are we recording this? I want to take notes. That was great.
Yeah, right? I love it. We're in class right now, and this is so amazing, right? So 2 major keys, if you didn't pick up on that: compete where you can win and create for your audience and not an audience. And there's such a major difference in that. So I hope the audience is taking notes because these are gems. So kind of jumping back to some other questions I have, the world has changed so much in the last 7 to 8 months, and we're still going through the pandemic, even though there's some people who feel that we're out of it, but we're not. So how do you feel creators should be adapting and changing, especially with the fear of a second wave coming that can bring more financial devastation to some folks?
Someone take this one. I got nothing. So I haven't thought of this at all.
You've unmuted, so now you're obligated to answer.
Okay. Okay. The one.
I'll do it. I'll
okay.
jump in out of mine.
Go. Mine was gonna be.
I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So we're talking. I just want to make sure I'm retaining the themes of the question. So we're talking a little bit about like, over the next like 6 months, what are some things that creators should maybe be thinking about as it relates to whatever this is that's happening outside right now? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, something that I was thinking about as it relates to this topic recently is kind of doing like an audit of what you need right now as a creator, and taking a look at, however you're managing your balance sheet or your income versus your costs, and maybe taking this time to just do a quick check. Are you earning an amount that's sustainable for you? And are you earning an amount of money right now as a creator that is sustainable and also gives you that time that I mentioned earlier to be flexible and grow and experiment? And if not, then what are some ways you can use this time to get to that place that you want to be? Maybe that's not your issue at all. Maybe you really want to grow that top of funnel. And so taking some time and using this time to sort of diagnose, like, what do I want to tackle next as a creative? And then you can start kind of thinking, well, if this is my goal, if my goal is that top of funnel, just fan growth, what kinds of things can I be doing in the next few months to work on that? Knowing and keeping in mind and not getting unrealistic and not being like, oh, events are probably going to be back in 6 weeks. They're probably not. What can you do that's operating within the realistic confines of like our worst case scenario over the next 6 months? And then something else that just kind of came to mind for me earlier when I was thinking about this panel was like, what problems do your fans have right now and how can you solve them? Which is like a very tech way to think about this. I get that. But seriously, are your fans telling you that they're like taking a walk every morning and that's like their one time that they get out of the house? Could you do like a walking track where it's you like chatting about your day? Or like, I don't know, are your fans talking about how their cat is the one thing that's like keeping them going? Maybe make a cat toy. I'm just thinking like, what are some ways we can look at this as like an opportunity to connect further in a time when people are like desperate to connect, saying that as someone that lived alone for 6 months of this, like desperate to connect, like how can you use that as an opportunity?
I absolutely love that. And, kind of piggybacking off of something that you said, Alexis, is, basically kind of pointing to the fact that just because you monetize doesn't mean that it's sustainable. So the ability to monetize your business doesn't mean it's going to upkeep itself or continue growing over time. So what are some things that can help make a creator's business sustainable?
I think it's the Go ahead, Ro.
No, you go. I'll yield the floor.
All right. Surprisingly, oh God, there we go. I was going to say surprisingly few interruptions, and then we hit that. I think the biggest thing is focusing on the fans, right? I think that if you pull too much of your focus to monetization, where you're bombarding people with offers or you're paywalling a large percent of your content, that's where people really hit that plateau and then oftentimes that decline. If you continue to focus on what got you there, whether it's, again, whatever the milestone is for you, 1,000 fans, 10,000, 100,000, a million, where if you continue to focus on delighting those fans, on having that relationship, and then the monetization just sort of comes with it naturally. It's not the first focus. The first focus is that creation and whatever that content is that you're putting out. That's the folks that we see sustain. And then if people that really pull a huge chunk of their focus to just the making money side of it, oftentimes we see the audience and probably relates to that theme of authenticity, it pull back and then the growth just start to slow down and lose energy there. So for me, it's all about putting as much time into the creativity as you can and then having the monetization be something that naturally comes with it, but doesn't become the focus.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of a really great book by Chris McGinnis. It's called Motivation for Creatives. And one of the things that he was talking about was exactly what you highlighted, Walker, was, when the reward becomes the sole motivation for everything that you're doing, it really strips away all of the creativity. And then over time, like, not only does it, your audience can realize that, but it's draining to you as well and depleting, because you're not getting new ideas. You're not taking in refreshing content or looking at things and flipping them in a different way. You're just like, pump the gas, pump it. So I have one more question before I'm going to kick it off to the Q&A, because I see there are a lot of questions and they're kind of bulky. So I want to make sure that we get to them and give them the love and time that they actually deserve. So my last question for the collective is, where do you see the future of creator monetization going?
Was this like a standoff? Is it a standoff to who first?
I went first last time. However, I am willing to do it again, but I was trying to be polite and letting one of you go first.
I think what's interesting in this is, like, I think we might have 3 separate answers. Maybe not. I don't know. Mine's short. I think, like, the interesting thing about the future is, like, even if you look at this conversation, we are speaking about creators as if they were like businesses. We're talking about, like, plan ahead, have a plan, figure out your funnel. And, like, a lot of the interesting things that I'm picking up on is, I think this is just going to get closer and closer. These creators are going to be starting to be talked about like businesses. They're going to operate like businesses. And these seem like really terrible terms to be using for a person. But, like, a lot of what we're doing is just dressing up, these, like, ruthless facts about, like, how to grow your audience and the strategies that companies that have, no personality might use, and be like, how do we adapt those to someone who's, like, highly specialized and is super creative. And so I think, like, my view of the future is, I think more and more tools like Patreon, like Fourth Wall, like Pietra are going to be put in the hands of creators. And if more and more businesses and brands are going to be people first and creator first, and more companies are going to have a different type of loyalty to companies because they are people. And I think it's just going to get more mature with time, and the tooling that we would normally see around, like, B2B software services that help companies grow their email lists are going to turn into a world where it's like we're building similar services that are, like, better designed, like, hyper specific for these people who are also running their, like, micro organizations. And it just so happens that the creativity is not coming from a board and a creative director. It's coming from, like, a super talented creative person that's sitting in their house in the Palisades or something like that. It's kind of cool future, I think. Someone one up me. Come on, guys. Let's go.
All right, I can go briefly. I mean, for me, I think, I always look at what are the folks that have all the support in the world, the budgets to have great teams, that have big teams. What are they doing, and what does that indicate about the future for folks that are more, solopreneurs or parts of very small teams? So for me, I think that creators, the revenue side, the monetization side, it's going to get much more diversified. So you're going to have multiple channels, that's sponsorships, brand deals, maybe on platform ads, e-commerce, memberships, donations. These things are going to make a more evenly split pie chart, whereas a lot of smaller creators today, by constraint of time, really have to kind of pick one thing to go in on. And so what I hope is that technology platforms enable creators, make it much easier for them to go and do these channels in really high quality, effective ways, but in ways where it doesn't have to become their focus. They can focus on the creativity, and that side comes easy. And then I think there's going to be just a general I think that the creator industry right now is sort of wild, wild west in terms of it's so new. And to think that, Americans watch far more YouTube than they watch TV. And that's just YouTube, right? That's not TikTok, Instagram, all these other platforms. And YouTube is what, 16 years old, 15 years old. So in 15 years, the world of entertainment has just so dramatically changed that this industry is still like figuring itself out. And so the other thing that I hope we see is a move towards giving creators ownership. I don't think that's going to come on the platforms like, the YouTubes of the world, because they have those network effects where they don't have to give up the control. But I really hope for when creators build those relationships with super fans, they're doing it on platforms where they have ownership of the data, of the branding, of everything. And so I hope that side continues to mature as well.
Huge +1 to everything that Ro and Walker said. I couldn't agree more with all of it. And it makes me really excited to hear you both share those views. And then I think the only thing I can add to all of that is that my ultimate hope is all of those things come true to the end, that being a creator is a respected, reliable career path, and that it is no longer just, they're going to be a musician, I want this to be something where people can say, oh yeah, I'm actually going to be a podcaster, or oh yeah, I'm leaving this job, I'm going to go pursue violin or whatever it might be. Like that's my goal. So I am hoping that all of the things we just talked about come true in service of that.
I love all of those points so much. And with that said, we're going to kick it to the live Q&A. So first question comes from Richard. He says, with the massive increase in value and opportunity for digital content and engagement that may be more evergreen, what tools and solutions are you seeing creators use to manage and curate all that content for their best use in order to monetize them on your fan engagement platforms? Does that make sense to y'all?
Really pushing me on the vocab, the words here. I think that, again, because like I mentioned a second ago, that we're still in this growing up of the industry, the tools are very dispersed, and I guess you could call them fragmented today. So I think there's a lot of individual smaller tools that serve very specific purposes. So it's tough to give like one answer without knowing what industry you're in, right? Because some industries, Teachable is an amazing platform for monetization for courses. Other artistic endeavors, Patreon is perfect. If you've got the audience that's going to love jewelry and beauty, Pietra is great as well. So it's really depends on your niche. And so it's hard to give like one general answer, but I do think there's like an explosion of tools and services specifically targeting creators. So whatever niche you are in, if you do a little digging, if you do a little Googling, if you ask around in terms of the creators that inspire you, that you follow, you're going to get some good answers there. And there's also a lot of stuff that's in the works right now that's coming out or already out, but very quiet over the next this year and next year.
Awesome. So our next question comes from an anonymous attendee. And this person asks, what are some best practices in marketing your products and memberships and going beyond just posting on your social media channels?
Going beyond just posting on your social media channels. Okay, I have like a half answer for this, which is, where else are you able to contact them? And hopefully that's like an email newsletter, but I would imagine it's still through like a digital channel. If it's not through a digital channel, for example, if you're creating something in the real world, as it was formerly known, you might have a difficult time converting someone from the real world to the internet. Like this is something I've seen where it's like, how do you get from like this in-person fan connection to them like going on their phone and downloading something? One way we've seen folks do it at Patreon is to create QR codes and to have QR codes at the event, similar to like, we've had people do it at their merch booths, for example. So when you might go and buy a t-shirt, instead you're signing up for a membership. I think that's a nice way to bring the IRL into the URL. But I would say that, typically you want to make sure that you're meeting people where they already are. And it's just going to be easier to convert someone if they're already like sitting at their computer or on their phone. So I would say use those social channels, use email if you can, and then IRL is going to be a little harder.
We're definitely not going to let that one go, right? The IRL to the URL. Walker, you can take
The
some.
mic drop moment. You gotta walk.
We're definitely not going to let that one go.
Right there.
I thought I was gonna get away with it.
No chance. No chance.
The one other thing that I would add is, in terms of what we see make the biggest impact, it's interaction. It's showing love to your supporters. And this is especially relevant for folks that are on, the smaller or growing side of the house. So as an example, we had a YouTuber, a freestyle rapper named Harry Mack, launch his website with Fourth Wall, I think about like a week ago. And inside of our app, you're able to send personal thank yous to your fans who interact, and we overlay all the information. These days, you could almost call it like kind of Cameo-esque. And the amplification in terms of, well, like I'll put it this way, the difference between folks that use our interaction tools and folks who don't, it's a drastic difference in conversion rate, in social engagement, in share rate, in repeat purchasing, et cetera. So one way to differentiate, and again, to compete where you can win and stand out from the audience, or stand out from the huge companies, let's say merch, and you're competing against Nike, right? They're deciding, are they going to buy the Nike hoodie or your hoodie? Is to show love in like a really personal way. I'll post the thank you that I got from Harry Mack just because it's my favorite one. So it's a perfect moment to drop it. But you can imagine that getting something like this it just makes it so special. And of course, I want to buy again. So interaction is a big amplifier.
I love that a bunch. So the next question comes in from Candy Washington. She says, agree that we as content creators are essentially small businesses. So any advice on how to get capital to sustain ourselves while we're developing content and then for marketing spend? And I think that's a really interesting question, particularly since when the pandemic had initially hit, there were so many creator funds that boomed overnight. Like Facebook created their own creator fund, I think for 100 million. And there are just so many funds springing up. And now there are even incubators for creators they're starting to sprout up. So I'm curious if y'all have any insights on that. But it's also interesting because so many people just started really, really small and just spent, the least money, kind of like the MVP, minimal viable product. Like we're spending $5 to see how far, what we can build with $5. So any thoughts there?
I can go. We have this is obviously like super hard for physical products when you're creating it because you need to invest in inventory and packaging and, those little branding moments that you can design and include in your packaging. Like those all matter when it comes to physical products. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about with Pietra is even before the pandemic, we had this vision of what can we do in the digital world before a product launches in order to, and kind of inspired by like Kickstarter, if you think about it, where someone can see an MVP of a product before it's purchased. And I'll give you, and that person can take that revenue, take that pre-sale. We can do some financial engineering with it and like help the creator finance their inventory and production order. And it's kind of cool to see if you really think about the tools out there, they're pretty sophisticated, right? Like, and if you've checked my Twitter, there's like some amazing examples of nowadays, if you like design packaging on Pietra, we can give you a 3D model of what the packaging looks like. If you design a piece of jewelry, we can give you a 3D virtual, like photorealistic version of what it's going to look like. And in some cases, it looks better than if you tried to photograph it because there's like no dust on it and like the lighting's perfect. For a candle line, for example, we've done the same. And it's like, I'm seeing, at least with Pietra and physical products, we're seeing technology at that point where we can get to something where you feel comfortable about supporting the creator and what they're going to be producing. And the digital versions of it are very, very close, if not exact, to like what you're going to get. And showcasing that as a way to say, okay, this is my candle line. Here's the box that it's going to come with. Here are the branding note cards. Here's the stickers. And here's the vessel. And it's all done in like unbelievably awesome Photoshop and put up on the website as pre-sale. And we're seeing like tremendous success with the people who are willing to go down that path. Obviously it's like scary to people to be like, this isn't even created yet. How am I going to sell it? But we're seeing this very interesting move with like, put the digital asset up, get support from your super fans. They fund the production run. and then you're off to the races, and you got to manage it, how you would manage it.
Anyone else want to chime in on that before I take it to one more question? No? Okay, great. To the last question. It feels so crazy because we just started, it feels like 5 seconds ago, and we're almost at an hour, and it's, oh my goodness, this time was a riot in the best way, because I think we've developed this camaraderie right now here on the virtual internets. So the last question will come from Mike Bell. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Belcito. I hope I'm saying that right. I wanted to show you love because you've been showing us love in the comments. So he said, our podcast, Rocket Shift FM, is growing. He said 5 to 10K downloads per episode, depending on the week. It's pretty big. But it's tough to really engage with them that much. Any ideas for really engaging with a podcast community, but for the purpose of making this relevant to everyone, just their own community? Jumping back to what Alexis had brought up earlier, creating for your audience, not in.
Nice. Okay, I have a thought. I have like a practical suggestion. Like if you asked me this at coffee, you were like, Alexis, what should I do with my podcast? I would say first and foremost, consider a chat server with something like Discord, because so that's a way for your community and your listeners to not only potentially engage with you if you want to, but also to engage with each other. And I think this is such a cool, almost like a side benefit that then can become a real benefit of building your community. So first, it's like the touch point is just between the creator and the fan. But by opening up a chat server and giving people a space to discuss this shared interest, which could be your podcast, or it could be different facets of the content that you discuss on your podcast, you're opening up this space for like-minded people to come together and engage with each other. And in that way, this thing that's tied to you and that's facilitated by you, you actually don't have to do that much maintenance or investment to kind of keep it running. Of course, you want to check in, you want to engage as much as possible. You could do Q&As, AMAs on there, things like that. But it becomes this sort of like self-sustaining machine. And so I think that just practical answer, I think a Discord, a chat server is just a great way to engage a podcast community specifically.
I totally agree. I think it's all about giving the audience a chance to talk to each other, because clearly they're like-minded and that they enjoy the podcast, and also to interact with you. So it's adding interaction as rewards for people that do support you, and then also adding that community like Alexis mentioned. So you can open up a Discord, drive people to Discord, and then with Patreon, you could do something like having a members only channel where it's a smaller group and you participate a little more in that channel. You could also use something like Fourth Wall to when you're selling product or selling some sort of offering or taking donations at a certain level, maybe people can ask a question during checkout and then you'll answer that question. So I think interaction is really what you're going to find is the best way to get people engaged with the more, I guess, paid or premium offerings that you have.
Okay, all right. So actually, we're going to do one last thing. We're going to make this a lightning round. Let's say, what's the one thing that you want everyone to take away from today? If nothing else, what's that one thing that each of you want every person who participated and attended today's events to take with them moving forward?
I thought that this is embarrassing because I don't remember if it was Roe or Walker who said it, but one of you said something about like not necessarily focusing on the monetization, focusing on the content and the authenticity, and then sort of like the opportunities for monetization will come. Was this Walker? Is that where we're pointing at him? Okay, great. Great job. And the reason why I think that's so important is because I think that that's sort of like a guiding principle that can answer a lot of questions for you as you think about how you should get up and spend your day and spend your time. And then what I would add to that point is that we also should acknowledge that we're in the real world where things cost money, rent and health insurance and paper towels, and you need to be able to buy them. So my suggestion would be to think realistically about what you need in order to like get through your day as a human person. And then how can you add your time to create on top of that realistically so that you can move forward as a creator in a way that is sustainable for you? You can keep paying your rent, you can keep doing your thing, and put your creation out there again and again so that ultimately you can make money from it.
All right, I'll go, even though I'm gonna claim that Alexis stole my point, but I think the core of it is do something you love, and the money will come. Like if people are engaging, the money will come. And then the other side of it is the compete where you can win. Don't try to go head to head against Nike for quality or coolness of the designs. You're not going to win. But what you can beat Nike on every day of the week is when somebody does support you, giving them a much warmer, more personal experience. And then not only are you giving them more reasons to support you, but also you're investing in them as like a long-term super fan. So it's like it pays off in multiple ways. So those are the two that I would sort of say are the biggest keys for me.
That was you can't do better than that one. What would I say? I think like the two things that I would tell someone is alongside what Walker said, which is like be authentic. Authenticity is infectious and people will pick up on it, and if you don't have an audience, people will start rallying around you if they feel you're authentic. And then the other thing that I tell people, which is the fear to like start something new is always there. It's there at every level and it's totally normal, but it's easier than you think to get started. And companies like the three of us are building these companies that hopefully make it incredibly easy and like over time more and more easy. But the fear itself, I'm like worried about starting is never going to go away. So like start now. And if you're authentic about it, like good things will happen.
Incredible. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists and to you, our amazing audience, for taking the time out of the day to join us. If you enjoyed this event, be sure to follow Worklife on Twitter and Instagram at WorklifeVC and our YouTube, Worklife YouTube. And this video will actually be uploaded onto YouTube. So if you want to rewatch this conversation again, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get a hold of this really great content again. And Ro, Walker, Alexis, where can the people find you and your platforms so this way they can go check it out?
You can head on over to patreon.com if you're interested in learning more about Patreon. And if you want to hear from me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at @YayAlexisGay.
There we go. If you're interested in creating a branded product or a company, pietrastudio.com. And if you want, I'm on Instagram as the Row Show, _Row_show. I made it like 5 years ago, so it is what it is.
So it's fourthwall.com, though. If you're a creator, please reach out. It's basically just an email address right now. We're sort of building in the background, and then I'm definitely not worth following on social media, so I'll just leave that.
Love to hear that. I know I'm not either. But thank you so much again to everyone for joining us. And we hope that you have an amazing day wherever you are in the world. And ciao.